Jamal Lewis was a name that most people in his neighborhood recognized, not for fame or fortune, but for his kindness and determination. Born and raised in the heart of an inner-city community that often struggled with poverty, violence, and neglect, Jamal had grown up surrounded by adversity. Yet, even as a child, he had found a way to see beauty in his surroundings. While other kids played basketball or video games, Jamal could often be found sketching the world around him. From the cracked pavement that told silent stories of decades past to the vibrant murals painted by local artists, every detail captivated his imagination. Jamal's love for art began early. He vividly remembered the first time he picked up a pencil and paper. It had been in 3rd grade, during a particularly chaotic day at school. His teacher, exasperated by the noise in the classroom, handed him a blank sheet of paper and said, "Draw something, Jamal." He had drawn a tree, an old oak with sprawling branches and intricate details that surprised even him. From that moment, he realized art was more than a pastime, it was a way to express himself, to escape, and to create a world where his voice could be heard. But growing up in a low-income household meant art supplies were a luxury. Jamal improvised, using old newspapers, scraps of cardboard, and even the backs of receipts, to practice his craft. His mother, who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, supported his passion as much as she could. She would bring home discarded magazines and crayons from the local diner where she worked, apologizing each time for not being able to afford more. Jamal never complained. To him, each piece of paper was an opportunity, each crayon a tool, to bring his visions to life. As Jamal grew older, his talent became undeniable. His high school art teacher, Mrs. Thompson, was one of the first to recognize his potential. She often stayed after school to mentor him, encouraging him to enter local art competitions. Jamal won a few of these, but the victories were bittersweet. While his peers were celebrated with scholarships and gallery offers, Jamal found doors closing in his face. He wasn't from the right background, nor did he have the connections needed to navigate the elite art world. By the time he turned 25, Jamal had created a substantial portfolio of work. His pieces ranged from detailed portraits of community elders to abstract depictions of systemic injustice. Despite his talent, the art world remained indifferent. Galleries rejected him with generic emails, and potential buyers often tried to lowball him, assuming his work wasn't worth much. Still, Jamal persevered. He took on odd jobs to support himself, working as a janitor during the day and painting through the night. His small apartment doubled as a makeshift studio, with canvases leaning against every wall and paint stains marking the floors. His neighbors often teased him, calling him Picasso of the projects, but Jamal wore the nickname with pride. He believed that someday, his work would find its audience. One fateful day, while scrolling through social media, Jamal came across a post about an art exhibition at the Rutherford Gallery, one of the most prestigious galleries in the city. The gallery was owned by Philip Rutherford, a man whose name was synonymous with high art and exclusivity. Philip was known for his sharp tongue and elitist views, often dismissing emerging artists as amateurs unworthy of serious consideration. To many, he was a gatekeeper of the art world, a man who decided whose work was valuable and whose wasn't. Despite Philip's reputation, Jamal saw an opportunity. He spent the next week preparing his portfolio, carefully selecting pieces that showcased his range and vision. When the day came, he dressed in his best suit, a hand-me-down from his uncle, and made his way to the Rutherford Gallery. The building itself was intimidating, with its towering glass facade and minimalist interior. Jamal hesitated at the entrance, clutching his portfolio tightly. He took a deep breath, reminded himself of all the late nights and sacrifices that had brought him here, and stepped inside. The gallery was buzzing with activity. Well-dressed patrons sipped champagne as they admired the carefully curated pieces on display. Jamal felt out of place among the crowd but refused to let his insecurities show. He approached the receptionist, a young woman with a polished demeanor, and asked to speak with Philip Rutherford. She raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed, but directed him to a waiting area. After what felt like an eternity, Philip appeared. He was a tall man with silver hair, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit. His sharp eyes scanned Jamal from head to toe, lingering on his scuffed shoes and worn briefcase. Without offering a handshake, Philip said, "You must be lost. This isn't an open call for submissions." Jamal swallowed his pride and introduced himself, explaining his desire to show his work. He opened his portfolio, displaying his best pieces, but Philip barely glanced at them. Instead, he smirked and said, "Do you honestly think this is gallery material? These drawings belong on refrigerator doors, not in a space like this." The words stung. Jamal felt his face grow hot with humiliation, but he refused to let Philip see him falter. "With all due respect, Mr. Rutherford," Jamal said, his voice steady, "I believe my work speaks for itself. All I'm asking for is a chance." Philip laughed, a cold, dismissive sound that echoed through the gallery. "A chance? Let me give you some advice, young man. Art isn't just about talent. It's about pedigree, connections, and marketability. And frankly, you have none of those." With that, Philip turned and walked away, leaving Jamal standing alone. The other patrons had overheard the exchange, and Jamal could feel their eyes on him, some filled with pity, others with amusement. He gathered his portfolio, his hands trembling, and left the gallery. The walk back to his apartment felt like the longest journey of his life. As soon as he got home, he placed his portfolio on the table and sat down, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to give up, to accept that the art world wasn't built for people like him. But another part, the part that had kept him going all these years, refused to let the dream die. Jamal spent the next few days reflecting on the encounter. He realized that Philip's words, though cruel, had ignited a fire within him. He was determined to prove that his worth wasn't defined by the opinions of elitist gatekeepers. If the traditional art world wouldn't give him a platform, he would create his own. With renewed determination, Jamal picked up his brushes and began working on a new series of pieces. These weren't just paintings, they were declarations of his resilience, his identity, and his unshakable belief in the power of art. Each stroke of the brush was a defiance of the limitations the world tried to impose on him. Jamal vowed that one day, he would walk back into the Rutherford Gallery, not as a struggling artist seeking validation, but as someone who had made it on his own terms. Little did he know, that day would come sooner than he expected. The days after Jamal's humiliating encounter with Philip Rutherford were some of the darkest he had experienced. Despite the sting of rejection, he knew giving up wasn't an option. The fire within him burned brighter, fueled by his determination to prove his worth to a world that had overlooked him for far too long. One evening, while scrolling through social media in search of inspiration, Jamal stumbled upon a post that would change everything. It was a cryptic message from a local artist collective announcing an exclusive underground art auction. The event, titled Anonymity Unveiled, offered emerging artists the rare opportunity to showcase their work without fear of judgment tied to their identity or background. All pieces would be presented anonymously, allowing the art to speak for itself. The concept intrigued Jamal. For the first time, he wouldn't have to worry about preconceived biases or stereotypes. His work would stand on its own merit, judged solely for its artistic value. The auction, however, was highly selective, and artists had to apply with samples of their work. Jamal hesitated for only a moment before submitting his best pieces. He poured his heart into the application, hoping that this might finally be the break he needed. The preparation. 2 weeks later, Jamal received an email from the collective. His work had been accepted for the auction. He could hardly believe it. This wasn't just an opportunity, it was validation that someone, somewhere, recognized the value of his art. He was given 1 month to prepare a new series of pieces for the event. Jamal threw himself into his work with a fervor he hadn't felt in years. He decided to focus on themes that were deeply personal: resilience, identity, and the human spirit's ability to endure and thrive against all odds. Each piece told a story. One painting, titled Mother's Hands, depicted his mother's weathered hands holding a cracked yet vibrant sunflower, symbolizing the sacrifices she had made to nurture him in a harsh world. Another, Urban Symphony, captured the chaotic beauty of his neighborhood, graffiti-covered walls, bustling streets, and the unspoken stories of its people. Each brushstroke was imbued with raw emotion, a reflection of his life experiences. Despite his limited resources, Jamal found innovative ways to bring his visions to life. He repurposed old canvases, mixed his own paints, and even incorporated materials like newspaper clippings and scraps of fabric into his work. The process was grueling, but Jamal thrived under the pressure. For the first time in a long while, he felt alive, as though he were finally creating not just art, but a legacy. The auction. The night of the auction arrived, and Jamal was a bundle of nerves. The event was held in an abandoned warehouse, converted into a makeshift gallery. The atmosphere was electric, with the city's elite mingling alongside art enthusiasts and collectors. Chandeliers made of recycled glass hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the room, while ambient music set the tone. Each artist's work was displayed without any identifying information, labeled only with a number. Jamal's pieces were scattered throughout the gallery, their vibrant colors and evocative imagery standing out even among the high-caliber competition. He watched from the shadows as attendees admired his work, their reactions ranging from awe to quiet contemplation. The auction began, and Jamal's anxiety intensified. As the auctioneer introduced the first of his pieces, Mother's Hands, Jamal held his breath. The starting bid was modest, but within minutes, the price skyrocketed. Collectors vied for the piece, their excitement palpable. The final bid? A staggering $150,000. Jamal could hardly believe it. His work had never sold for more than a few $100s before, and now it was being fought over by some of the most influential people in the city. The success didn't stop there. Each of Jamal's pieces became a highlight of the evening, with bids climbing higher and higher. One collector described his work as hauntingly beautiful, while another praised its unparalleled authenticity. Jamal's pseudonym, Nexus, quickly became the talk of the event. Philip's purchase. Among the attendees was none other than Philip Rutherford. Jamal hadn't expected to see him there, but in retrospect, it made sense. Philip was a fixture at such events, always on the hunt for the next big thing in the art world. What Jamal hadn't anticipated was that Philip would take an interest in his work. As the auctioneer introduced Urban Symphony, Philip's attention was immediately drawn to the piece. He leaned closer, inspecting the intricate details and vibrant colors. "This," he muttered to a fellow collector, "is remarkable. The raw emotion, the technique, it's extraordinary." The bidding for Urban Symphony was fierce, but Philip was determined to claim it for his collection. He outbid everyone, securing the piece for $450,000. Jamal watched the scene unfold from a distance, a mixture of disbelief and vindication coursing through him. The same man who had dismissed his art as unworthy now sang its praises, completely unaware of the irony. A shift in confidence. By the end of the night, all of Jamal's pieces had sold, collectively earning over $2 million. It was a life-changing moment, not just financially, but emotionally. For the first time, Jamal felt truly seen and appreciated for his talent. The validation he had sought for so long was finally his, not because of his background, but because of the power of his art. Word of the mysterious artist Nexus spread rapidly. Critics lauded the work, describing it as a groundbreaking fusion of personal narrative and universal themes. Social media buzzed with speculation about Nexus's identity, with some even suggesting the artist might be a seasoned professional working under an alias. Jamal, however, chose to remain in the shadows for the time being. The anonymity allowed him to focus on his work without the distractions of fame or the pressures of public scrutiny. It also gave him a unique advantage, the ability to observe the art world's response to his success without revealing his true identity. Philip, oblivious to the truth, became one of Nexus's most vocal advocates. He wrote a glowing review of Urban Symphony for an art magazine, calling it a masterpiece that redefines contemporary art. The irony wasn't lost on Jamal, but instead of feeling bitter, he found the situation empowering. He had achieved what he set out to do, prove that his work was valuable, regardless of the biases and barriers he had faced. Conclusion of the turning point. The auction marked a turning point not only in Jamal's career but in his perspective. For years, he had allowed the art world's gatekeepers to dictate his worth. Now, he realized that his value wasn't determined by their approval, it was inherent in the stories he told through his art. With newfound confidence, Jamal began planning his next move. He knew the time would come to step out from behind the pseudonym and reveal himself to the world. But for now, he was content to let his art do the talking, knowing that the best was yet to come. The success of the underground art auction catapulted Jamal's pseudonym, Nexus, into the upper echelons of the art world. As word spread about the mysterious artist behind the breathtaking pieces, demand for his work surged. Collectors scrambled to acquire his paintings, and critics dissected every brushstroke, searching for deeper meaning. To Jamal, it was surreal. He had gone from a struggling artist unable to sell his work for $100 to a phenomenon commanding millions, all while hiding in plain sight. The Nexus phenomenon. Despite his newfound success, Jamal remained cautious. He continued to operate under the Nexus alias, carefully curating his public image, or lack thereof. No interviews, no appearances, no slip-ups. This anonymity only added to the allure. Speculation about Nexus's identity became a topic of heated debate in the art community. Some believed Nexus was a collective of artists rather than a single individual. Others theorized it was a renowned artist reinventing themselves. Jamal monitored these conversations with quiet amusement. The anonymity gave him freedom, a chance to observe the art world without its prejudice directly impacting him. He noted the hypocrisy with growing clarity. Critics who once dismissed similar themes in his work now lauded Nexus for redefining the narrative of struggle and resilience. Collectors who had balked at his portfolio years ago now fought over his paintings, each one eager to claim ownership of the next masterpiece. Themes of struggle and triumph. As Nexus's reputation grew, Jamal couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought him here. Late at night, alone in his apartment-turned-studio, memories of his struggles played in his mind like scenes from a film. He remembered the times he'd sketched on scraps of paper because he couldn't afford proper materials, how his mother's tired but encouraging words had kept him going when he felt like giving up. He thought about the rejection letters from galleries, each one a blow to his confidence, and the sting of Philip Rutherford's mocking words. But alongside the pain were moments of triumph, winning his first small art contest, the pride in his mother's eyes when she saw his first completed canvas, and now, the growing recognition he had worked so hard to achieve. These memories continued to shape his work. Each new piece he created under the Nexus name carried a fragment of his story. A painting titled Unbroken Chain depicted interlocked hands forged from steel, symbolizing the strength of community and the resilience passed down through generations. Another, The Ascent, showed a figure climbing a towering ladder, its rungs made of shattered glass, representing the painful yet necessary journey toward success. These themes resonated deeply with audiences. Critics praised the work for its raw honesty and profound emotional depth, unaware that the stories behind the paintings were deeply personal. A game of strategy. Jamal quickly realized that the anonymity wasn't just a shield, it was a powerful tool. By remaining a mystery, he controlled the narrative. He could dictate how and when his art was seen, choosing projects and collaborations that aligned with his values. He turned down lucrative offers from galleries and collectors who sought to commercialize his work, refusing to compromise the integrity of his vision. Behind the scenes, Jamal established connections with a small network of trusted allies. These included his former art teacher, Mrs. Thompson, who acted as an informal advisor, and a tech-savvy friend, Malik, who helped manage the logistics of selling his work under the Nexus pseudonym. Together, they ensured that Jamal maintained control over his career, even as demand for his art skyrocketed. Through Malik's connections, Jamal also began exploring new ways to reach his audience. He collaborated with charities and grassroots organizations, donating portions of his earnings to support underprivileged communities and fund art programs in schools. These acts of generosity only enhanced the mystique of Nexus, with many lauding the artist not only for his talent but also for his apparent altruism. Critical acclaim. One of the turning points in Nexus's rise to fame came when a prominent art critic, Simone Carver, wrote an in-depth piece about his work. Published in an influential art magazine, the article, titled The Soul of Nexus, a revolutionary voice in modern art, was a glowing analysis of his themes, techniques, and impact on the art world. Carver described Nexus as a once-in-a-generation talent whose work captures the universal struggle for identity, belonging, and purpose. She praised his ability to blend traditional techniques with innovative approaches, calling his pieces a bridge between the past and the future of art. The article cemented Nexus's status as a major figure in the art community, further driving up the value of his work. Jamal read the article with mixed emotions. While he was grateful for the recognition, he couldn't ignore the irony. The same institutions that had once rejected him now celebrated him as a visionary. It was a bittersweet victory, a reminder of how much the art world was influenced by perception and pretense. Planning the reveal. As Nexus's fame grew, so did the pressure to reveal his identity. Collectors, critics, and fans alike were desperate to know the person behind the pseudonym. Rumors swirled, and the art world buzzed with speculation. Jamal knew that the time would come when he would have to step into the spotlight, but he wanted to do it on his own terms. He began to devise a plan for the reveal, one that would not only unmask him but also challenge the art world's deeply ingrained biases. Jamal envisioned an event that would be more than just a spectacle, it would be a statement. He wanted to confront the hypocrisy he had observed firsthand, using his story to shed light on the barriers faced by underrepresented artists. The idea took shape over several months. Jamal decided to organize an exclusive exhibition featuring his most personal works yet. Each piece would tell a chapter of his journey, culminating in the grand reveal of his identity as Nexus. The event would be invitation only, ensuring that the audience included both supporters and skeptics, including Philip Rutherford. A quiet confidence. As Jamal worked on the pieces for the exhibition, he felt a sense of calm determination. The journey to this point had been arduous, but it had also been transformative. He was no longer the young artist seeking validation from an indifferent world. He had found his voice, and now, he was ready to use it. The reveal would be a risk, but Jamal was prepared. He knew that some would celebrate him, while others might question his methods or intentions. But above all, he hoped his story would inspire other aspiring artists to pursue their dreams, no matter the obstacles. As the date for the exhibition approached, Jamal took a moment to reflect. He stood in his studio, surrounded by the fruits of his labor, paintings that bore the weight of his experiences, his struggles, and his triumphs. For the first time in his life, he felt truly at peace with who he was and the path he had chosen. The world didn't know it yet, but a reckoning was coming. And when the time came, Jamal Lewis, known to the world as Nexus, would make sure his voice was heard. The day had finally arrived. The exclusive exhibition was set to take place in one of the city's most luxurious art venues, a sprawling gallery with high ceilings, soft lighting, and walls that seemed to stretch endlessly. Jamal had spent months planning every detail, ensuring the event would be a perfect blend of art, mystery, and revelation. Invitations had been sent to a carefully curated list of attendees, top collectors, influential critics, prominent artists, and even some of Jamal's harshest detractors, including Philip Rutherford. The exhibition was titled Through My Eyes, a Nexus retrospective. It was an invitation not just to view the work, but to step into the mind of the artist and experience the journey that had brought him here. The collection featured a mix of Jamal's older pieces, created during his years of struggle, and new works that captured his triumphs and reflections on the art world. Each piece was accompanied by a short, cryptic description, leaving viewers to interpret the deeper meaning for themselves. The atmosphere. As the attendees arrived, the gallery buzzed with anticipation. The allure of Nexus's anonymity had drawn an impressive crowd, and whispers filled the air as people speculated about the artist's identity. Philip Rutherford was among the first to arrive, his usual air of superiority firmly intact. He exchanged pleasantries with other guests, expressing his admiration for Nexus's work while subtly boasting about the piece he had purchased at the underground auction. "This Nexus character," he remarked to a fellow collector, "is a genius. Whoever they are, they've redefined contemporary art. I'd give anything to meet them." Little did he know, his wish was about to come true. The exhibition begins. The event officially commenced with a brief welcome speech from the gallery director, who expressed gratitude to Nexus for allowing them to host such an extraordinary collection. The audience was then invited to explore the gallery, where Jamal's pieces were displayed in carefully arranged sequences, each telling a part of his story. One section, titled Roots and Resistance, featured works inspired by Jamal's childhood and the resilience of his community. Another, Shattered Illusions, depicted the pain of rejection and the hypocrisy he had encountered in the art world. The final section, Rising Above, showcased vibrant, triumphant pieces symbolizing hope, self-discovery, and the power of perseverance. As the attendees moved through the gallery, their reactions ranged from awe to introspection. Many were visibly moved, while others engaged in animated discussions about the themes and techniques on display. Philip, in particular, was captivated. He lingered before a piece titled The Mockingbird's Echo, which depicted a caged bird with fiery eyes, its wings stretched wide as it prepared to break free. There was something hauntingly familiar about the work, though he couldn't quite place it. The Grand Unveiling. At the center of the gallery was a large, veiled painting, bigger and more commanding than any of the others. The plaque beside it read, "Unmasking, the Artist Revealed." Speculation reached a fever pitch as attendees gathered around, eager to witness the moment when Nexus would finally unveil their identity. Jamal stepped onto a small stage that had been set up nearby, dressed simply in a dark suit. A hush fell over the crowd as he approached the microphone, his calm yet commanding presence drawing everyone's attention. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady. "Thank you all for being here tonight. It's an honor to share this collection with you, but more importantly, it's an opportunity to share my story." He paused, scanning the audience. He could see Philip in the front row, his expression curious, but guarded. "For years, I poured my heart into my work, using art as a way to navigate the challenges of life and to express truths that words cannot capture. Yet, like so many others, I was met with rejection, indifference, and the ever-present barriers that exist for artists who don't fit the mold of what the art world deems worthy." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Jamal continued. "When I created Nexus, it wasn't just a pseudonym. It was a shield, a way to let my work be judged without the weight of my identity. And now, I believe it's time to take off that shield." With that, Jamal reached for the veil covering the central painting and pulled it away, revealing a powerful self-portrait. The piece depicted Jamal standing tall amidst a chaotic storm, holding a paintbrush that seemed to radiate light. The title beneath it read, "Jamal Lewis, the man behind Nexus." The crowd's reaction. The room erupted in a mix of gasps, applause, and stunned silence. Philip's face went pale as the realization hit him. The man he had dismissed and humiliated as an amateur was the very artist he had been praising to anyone who would listen. Jamal allowed the moment to sink in before speaking again. "Some of you may recognize me. A few years ago, I walked into the Rutherford gallery with my portfolio, hoping for a chance to prove myself. I was told that my work belonged on refrigerator doors, not in a gallery. That experience could have crushed me, but instead, it fueled me." Philip shifted uncomfortably, his usual composure slipping. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but seemed to think better of it. "I share this story not to embarrass anyone," Jamal continued, his tone measured but firm, "but to highlight the systemic barriers that exist in this industry. Too often, artists are judged not by their talent or vision, but by their background, their connections, or the color of their skin." The room was silent now, every eye fixed on Jamal. "This exhibition is more than a celebration of my work. It's a call to action. We must do better, not just in recognizing diverse voices, but in creating spaces where those voices can thrive. Because art is not just a privilege, it's a universal language that belongs to all of us." Philip's embarrassment. Philip's embarrassment was palpable. He avoided eye contact with Jamal, his face flushed. One of the critics standing nearby whispered something to him, but Philip waved them off, clearly flustered. For once, the man who always had a sharp retort found himself at a loss for words. After the speech, Jamal made his way through the crowd, greeting attendees who wanted to congratulate him. When he reached Philip, the gallery owner hesitated before extending his hand. "Jamal," Philip began, forcing a smile. I had no idea. Your work is extraordinary." Jamal shook his hand but didn't let the moment pass without making his point. "Thank you, Philip. I hope this reminds you that talent comes from everywhere, not just the circles we're comfortable with." Philip nodded, the weight of his humiliation clear in his expression. Mixed reactions. As the evening continued, the reactions from the crowd varied. Many applauded Jamal's courage and praised him for using his platform to spark important conversations. Some collectors expressed regret for OT having purchased his earlier works, while others re-evaluated their biases and assumptions about artists from underrepresented backgrounds. However, not everyone was supportive. A few critics dismissed Jamal's speech as overly political, arguing that art should be separate from social commentary. Others whispered about whether his reveal would diminish the allure of Nexus's mystique. Jamal, however, didn't let the negativity faze him. He knew that true change was never easy and that every step forward was worth the resistance. The beginning of a new chapter. By the end of the night, Jamal felt a profound sense of closure. He had finally stepped into the light, not as Nexus, but as himself. The road ahead was still uncertain, but he was ready to face whatever challenges came his way. For the first time, he felt fully in control of his narrative, and the art world would never be the same. The revelation of Jamal Lewis as the artist behind Nexus sent shockwaves through the art world. Overnight, he became a household name, a symbol of resilience and authenticity in an industry often criticized for its elitism and exclusivity. While the majority celebrated his rise, some found themselves grappling with the uncomfortable truths his story brought to light, none more so than Philip Rutherford. Philip's offer. In the weeks following the exhibition, Philip found himself at the center of controversy. News of his dismissive treatment of Jamal years earlier spread like wildfire, amplified by social media and opinion pieces dissecting the event. Collectors began questioning his judgment, and critics who once revered him now scrutinized his past actions. Philip, desperate to salvage his reputation, reached out to Jamal. One morning, Jamal received an email with the subject line, "A proposal for collaboration." In it, Philip expressed regret for his behavior and praised Jamal's talent, offering to host a solo exhibition for him at the Rutherford Gallery. The message was carefully worded, attempting to strike a balance between humility and self-interest. Jamal read the email twice, his emotions a mix of vindication and disappointment. While he appreciated the gesture, he couldn't ignore the fact that Philip's motivations were likely driven more by self-preservation than genuine remorse. After some reflection, he composed a polite but firm response. "Thank you for your offer, Philip," he wrote. "However, I believe my path lies elsewhere. I wish you the best in your future endeavors." The birth of the Nexus Gallery. Instead of aligning himself with the institutions that had once excluded him, Jamal chose to forge his own path. Using the funds he had earned from his art, he purchased a small, run-down building in his hometown and began transforming it into a gallery. He named it the Nexus Gallery, a nod to the pseudonym that had helped him gain recognition. The gallery was unlike anything the city had seen. Its mission was clear, to provide a platform for underrepresented artists, particularly those from marginalized communities. Jamal envisioned it as a space where creativity could thrive without the constraints of elitism or bias, a haven for those who, like him, had been overlooked and underestimated. Jamal personally oversaw every detail of the gallery's renovation, from the layout of the exhibition spaces to the selection of local artists whose work would be featured in the inaugural show. He also established mentorship programs, offering guidance and resources to aspiring artists who lacked access to formal training or industry connections. The opening night of the Nexus Gallery was a resounding success. Hundreds of people attended, including community members, art enthusiasts, and even a few notable critics who were eager to see what Jamal had created. The exhibition featured a diverse range of work, from vibrant street art to thought-provoking sculptures, each piece a testament to the talent and vision of the artists Jamal had chosen to uplift. The ripple effect. As the Nexus Gallery gained prominence, its impact began to ripple through the art world. Stories emerged of artists whose lives had been transformed by the opportunities the gallery provided. One such artist was Maria Vasquez, a single mother who had been creating intricate, dreamlike paintings in her spare time while working as a waitress. Under Jamal's mentorship, Maria's work was showcased at the Nexus Gallery, catching the attention of collectors who admired her unique style. Within a year, she was able to leave her job and pursue art full-time. Another success story was Elijah Brooks, a teenager from a rough neighborhood who had turned to graffiti as a form of self-expression. Jamal saw potential in Elijah's bold, expressive designs and encouraged him to refine his technique. With Jamal's support, Elijah secured a scholarship to a prestigious art school and later returned to the Nexus Gallery as a featured artist. These stories, and many others like them, cemented the Nexus Gallery's reputation as a beacon of hope and opportunity. Jamal's commitment to nurturing talent and fostering diversity earned him widespread respect, and his gallery became a symbol of what the art world could be if it embraced inclusion and innovation. Philip's downfall. While Jamal thrived, Philip Rutherford faced a steady decline. His attempt to collaborate with Jamal had been seen by many as a hollow gesture, and the backlash against him continued to grow. Collectors began pulling their business from the Rutherford Gallery, citing concerns about Philip's judgment and ethics. Critics who had once praised him now questioned his role as a gatekeeper in an industry that was increasingly being challenged to evolve. Philip's attempts to reinvent his image fell flat. His public apologies were dismissed as insincere, and his once loyal clientele found new avenues to explore, many of them turning to the Nexus Gallery as a refreshing alternative. Over time, the Rutherford Gallery faded from prominence, a relic of an era that was quickly being left behind. Jamals Reflection. Years later, Jamal stood in the main hall of the Nexus Gallery, now a thriving institution that had expanded to include art classes, workshops, and community events. The walls were adorned with pieces from emerging artists whose voices might never have been heard without the platform he had created. As he looked around, Jamal couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought him here. He thought of the late nights spent painting in his cramped apartment, the sting of rejection letters, and the humiliation he had felt in Philip Rutherford's gallery. Each obstacle had been a stepping stone, shaping him into the artist and advocate he had become. In a quiet moment, Jamal walked over to one of his own pieces, a self-portrait titled Resilience. It depicted a figure standing tall amidst a storm, surrounded by vibrant colors that symbolized hope and possibility. He smiled, knowing that the storms he had weathered had led him to this moment. Envisioning the future. As Jamal looked ahead, he felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for his success, but for the chance to make a difference. He knew there was still work to be done, but he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The art world is changing, he said to himself. And this is just the beginning. With that, he turned his attention back to the gallery, where a group of young artists was preparing for their first exhibition. Their excitement was infectious, a reminder of why he had embarked on this journey in the first place. As Jamal walked toward them, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to continue building a legacy that would inspire generations to come.